Hey, I'm Sergio from Soro Studio, and in this project, I ended up creating something far more spectacular than I ever expected. I bought one of the most exotic and spectacular woods I had ever seen, and things did not go as planned. Cutting and milling woods like this is incredibly difficult. The density, the instability, every step became a challenge. This small piece of Pommele Sapele cost almost $300, so making the first cut was terrifying. Highly figured woods like this can move instantly after being cut, twisting, warping, or completely ruining the panel, and somehow I needed it perfectly flat. I decided to build a watchbox using four different woods: beech, Pommele sapele, Purpleheart, and walnut. Combining so many woods into a single design can easily look terrible or become something truly beautiful. You might think Purple Heart cuts easily, but that couldn't be further from the truth. This wood is unbelievably dense. It's here, at the table saw, where working with Pommele Sapele becomes really delicate. Highly figured woods like this can contain a lot of internal tension, and sometimes the veneer can crack, split apart, or move unexpectedly the moment you cut it. This is the moment to find out what to expect from this wood, and honestly, I was really nervous. It was perfect, and the moment the cut was made, new patterns started appearing across the grain. It looked absolutely stunning. And then the moment finally arrived. Seriously, don't try this at home. I honestly wasn't expecting any problems here. I couldn't fully understand what was happening, so I tried a second time. The problem was simple. This wood was on another level. The density of the Purple Heart was unbelievable. Every cut felt wrong. At some points, the bandsaw teeth felt like they were hitting metal. I was taking incredibly light passes on the sapel, but then everything went wrong. The Pommele sapele got caught in the planer, leaving small tear-outs all across the surface. Just like that, the panel was unusable. I was honestly too afraid to risk ruining more pieces, so for the next panels, I switched to sanding them by hand instead, slowly, carefully, until the surface was finally perfect enough to use. I decided to begin with the top lid of the box. The idea behind this piece was to create something almost sculptural, something that, the moment you see it, feels like it's hiding a treasure inside. In this case, the box will hold four watches and a hidden compartment. The top lid combines a central panel of Pommele Sapele, framed by a thin line of purple heart and finished in walnut. Together, the combination gives the piece a feeling that almost reminds me of antique furniture. One thing that's always missing in a workshop is clamps, and in this case, I didn't have clamps in the right size. They were either too small or way too large for the piece I was working on. 45-degree miters are incredibly difficult to fit perfectly, and in this project, they would remain fully visible on the top lid, so I spent a long time refining every joint, trying to achieve perfectly clean lines. I decided to build the outer box in walnut using 45-degree miter joints, and honestly, it took me a very long time to learn how to make joints like these look truly perfect. The material is incredibly thin, which makes the entire glue up much more difficult than it seems. Even the smallest mistake can ruin the alignment completely. I'll use the lower panel to reinforce the structure and create a much stronger joint, so the box won't eventually start separating over time. And on the top, I'll add a thin purple heart accent line, slightly offset from the walnut miters, helping lock the joint together. Honestly, I learned this lesson from a previous project. On an earlier walnut cabinet, the door slowly started warping against the grain direction, something completely normal in solid wood. But at this scale, I never expected the movement to become so noticeable. These types of clamps never really worked for me. I bought a lot of them, and honestly, I almost never use them anymore. Every time I tried using them for glue ups like this, the entire box would end up slightly deformed or twisted. So now, I mostly use them just to hold everything lightly in place while I glue all the parts together properly. The secret to getting perfect joints like these is a couple of good strap clamps, and honestly, a lot of glue. I tried all kinds of methods to apply even pressure across the box, but nothing worked as well as strap clamps for miters like these. Inside the walnut box, I'll build a heavy beech insert designed to slide in and out as smoothly as possible. Honestly, I've always been obsessed with those perfectly fitted boxes where one piece slowly slides into another with almost no friction. So I wanted to recreate that feeling here. Just like with the outer box, I'll use the lower panel to reinforce the 45-degree joints. But honestly, when it comes to beech, I'm not too worried. Compared to the other woods in this project, it's incredibly easy to work with. One trick I learned for removing excess glue is using a small strip of painter's tape near the joint. But the real secret is timing. You have to wait until the glue becomes slightly rubbery, not fully hard, just gummy. At that point, it peels away incredibly cleanly with a chisel. And once again, the strap clamps turned out to be the key. I decided to leave space for 4 watches. And honestly, the box is actually much larger than it needs to be. It could probably hold 6 watches, maybe even more, but that completely misses the point. I didn't want this to feel like storage. I wanted 4 watches to feel like pieces of art, the kind of watches that make you believe there has to be something truly special hidden inside this box. This is probably the part I fear the most. bringing together pieces that were made separately. Because no matter how carefully you measure everything, there's almost always some small amount of error. In my case, there was a tiny difference between the lid and the base, so I slowly sanded the base down until both pieces fit together perfectly. And honestly, even fine sanding with 240 grit can slightly change the dimensions. I know I'm probably way too obsessive about details like this. Above the beech insert, I decided to add thin lines of Pommele Sapele and Purpleheart. This wasn't part of the original design, but once I saw the insert inside the box, something just didn't feel right. It looked unfinished, so I started adjusting the design until everything finally felt balanced. I always try to leave a small amount of extra material, even if I know I'll have to remove it later with the planer. That way, I can make sure everything ends up perfectly flush and aligned. This is one of those delicate moments where you finally discover if all the measurements were accurate enough and whether the beech insert actually fits perfectly inside the walnut box. Honestly, there was a tiny bit of friction in a few places, but thankfully a little sanding with 240 grit fixed it almost immediately. It was incredible. The insert fit perfectly inside the walnut box, smooth, precise, exactly how I imagined it. I was genuinely excited at this point. Honestly, I just wanted to see the project finally finished, to apply the final finish, and watch the grain come alive under the light. The project already felt incredible at this point, but I still couldn't stop thinking about the hinges. Honestly, installing hinges is one of the biggest headaches when building boxes like these. The lid and base can be perfectly aligned on their own, but then you also need the hinges to be perfectly aligned. And achieving that level of precision is much harder than it looks. The hinge installation was unbelievably stressful. A tiny mistake here, and the entire alignment of the box would be ruined. And with projects like this, there's no middle ground. Either it looks amateur, or the lines become so clean and precise, they almost don't look real. And finally, the most rewarding part of the entire project. All the problems, mistakes, and complications were finally behind me. And now it was time for the most spectacular moment in projects like this, applying the finish. Really stunning. Honestly, I never imagined it would turn out this well. Up to this point, the project already looked incredible, but there was still one final step left, applying the nano top coat, a thin protective layer that adds a subtle glow to the surface while making the grain stand out even more under the light. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next project.